My name is Brian Tobjornsen. I live in Duluth, Minnesota, and I'm a longtime member of the Democratic Socialists of America and a new member of SCOTA, which is the Solidarity Committee of the Americas. So if you have a chance, please like and follow the SCOTA Facebook page and stay tuned in to our activities such as this, and also including a upcoming trip to Cuba in November. So if you're interested in that, get in touch with us. But I was recently a guest in the beautiful country of Colombia, and that is why I was asked to moderate the coffee hour here, to facilitate a discussion on the recent election there that, as we saw, is a fairly significant change from decades of history with Colombia, and so there's a lot of questions about that. And that's kind of what we're here to talk about today. And so Colombia now leans to the left, and we have two guests here. Well, one at least right now. I think we're working on the other one yet. But we have two guests here to help us understand what this means. Our first one is James Patrick Jordan. He lives in Tucson, Arizona, and has a long history of grassroots organizing. His work at the Alliance for Global Justice has focused on labor, ecology, and Colombia solidarity. He's also a part of the Respect for Democracy campaign against U.S. interference in foreign elections. We also will be having, hopefully soon, Ofunji Obakaso. Ofunji is a shaman, Babalao, and human rights defender who has advanced human rights, Afro-descendant, and indigenous rights in the Americas and Africa. He is the host of a weekly show that airs on Contagio Radio, La Nueva Prensa, and other channels titled Colombia Peace Accord. That brings the perspectives of victims, Afro-descendants, indigenous women, rural farmers, LGBTI, people from all sides of the conflict, and frontline leaders to the global discussion on Colombia's peace accord. He recently served as an electoral observer in Colombia's presidential election, and he'll be joined with his interpreter, Jimena Sanchez, who is with the Washington Office on Latin America. So we welcome our two guests, and welcome to all of you. James and Ofushi will each talk with us for about 10 minutes. Ofushi has an interpreter, so he may go a little bit longer. Following the presentations, SCOTA has some questions for the two of them, and then we open it up to your questions. And I would ask each of you to please enter your questions into the chat or Facebook comments, and then we'll have Sarah or Kim read them for us when the time comes. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to James, and please welcome him, and we'll give him our attention. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I perhaps misunderstood a little. I thought the entire format was going to be a question and answer sort of format. So I didn't actually prepare a 10-minute presentation, but I nevertheless, I think I could easily talk about just a little bit about what I've been doing down here and what's going on, because it all has to do with the elections. The Alliance for Global Justice, where I work, initiated a process. We were working with the committee for the Permanent Committee for Human Rights, or CPDH, to bring down a mission, an electoral observation mission. We started talking about this a year ago, planning for it. But as we came closer and closer, it grew into a truly international mission. It was sponsored. We worked with the CPDH and also with the Fundación Lazos de Dignidad, or Links of Dignity, who are old friends of ours. And we had a delegation that included people from the United States, of course. So we also worked with the National Lawyers Guild and with the Red Green Alliance in Denmark, and the People's Human Rights Observatory, which is international, but base is in Oaxaca, Mexico. But we had a delegation that included people from the US, Denmark, Germany, Canada, and Nicaragua, and of course people from Colombia that were here. And it was really a big undertaking because we did observation and then organized observation again for the first and second rounds of the political presidential elections. And we also, very ambitious, we organized an all-day live stream, mostly in English, about the elections as the vote was going on and then as the results came in. And we did that again on the second round, had a kind of watch party as the votes came in. And that was pretty successful on our teams. We had thousands of viewers. I don't know exactly how much. And even Pink Floyd's Roger Waters got in touch with us and he wanted to put out a statement to the Colombian people. So we helped him with that. That was exciting. I never thought I'd be getting a phone call from him. But we also, I want to say just in terms of our observation and to give some context, is the Alliance for Global Justice has always taken a great deal of pride in being close to the base. And we've worked with unions in Colombia, but we have especially worked with the peasant farmer, campesino unions and organizations. So we get pretty far out in the rural areas of Colombia. We have over the years, and we also believe in going where the need is great. And so we often go where others don't, And I'll say about our observation, we're very closely connected with communities in the north of Cauca, where political violence has been particularly high. And we were working with the official authorities as observers. We worked with the National Electoral Commission and with the MOI, the mission of, electoral observation mission, which handled credentials. And we were fully credentialed in the first round. In the second round, it was a little bit different what we were doing, but we had gotten credentials. We were credentialed in some places, but they pulled our credentials for going to Corinto and Miranda because they said it was just too dangerous and they couldn't justify that. There had been a bombing just a couple of days before in Corinto, and we're particularly close to Miranda, and there had been like 3 killings in 6 weeks in that community alone. People we knew were threatened. But I just want to say, like, our position is, if we're going to be observers and accompaniers, we need to go where observers and accompaniers are being needed most. But I just would like to say that I think we got a real perspective on the elections that many others didn't get because of our willingness to go to difficult places. We went to Cucuta on the border with Venezuela. We were in the north in La Guajira and Valledupar, of course, in Cali, but it was a very interesting perspective. But I've just to kind of bring my improvised presentation to a close. I won't say that I'm still in Colombia and I'm here until August 13th. I'll be, along with other people, we're helping out people from the All African People's Revolutionary Party, GC. They're coming down for a delegation, so we're helping them out with some contacts, but we'll be at the inauguration. But I just want to say that being here and also in the areas that we work, like in the north of Cauca and in Cali, there have been several threats, acts of violence going on. And I think that this is a tremendous victory, but we also really have to be prepared for the backlash in both legal and illegal. And I'd like to say that we support something called the Human Rights Center of the Pacific in Cali. We call it the Centro Pacifico. And that's a project we've been supporting that has provided spaces for refugees and people fleeing violence and provides meeting and organizing spaces. It was an important place for getting out supplies to street medics during the national strike. And it was broken into last night. That's one of the reasons I was a little bit late. And case files were, the people broke in were obviously there. I mean, we're moving out, so there's a lot of things that weren't there. We're moving to a more secure location, but they broke in, and it was just obviously a follow-up on threats and intimidation. So it's an exciting period that we're going into. This election is a game changer in so many ways, and the need for solidarity is going to be stronger than ever on all fronts. You know, in Congress, supporting human rights defenders who are going to continue to be threatened, and it's by no means a done deal in Colombia today.
Alrighty, well, thank you, James. And sorry about the miscommunication as to the format of this. I don't quite know how that happened, but
no, I don't think it's a miscommunication. I just think I've been unconnected for a few days too. I was out in the country, right? So I'm just catching up on some things.
Okay, well, so yeah, again, just a reminder, folks, if you could please enter your questions into the chat or Facebook. We have Ofushi with us now, and I want to invite him to turn his camera on and his speaker, and we will look forward to hearing what he has to say. And Ofushi, just to let you know, I know you came in a little late, that we're gonna, you got about 10, 15, 20 minutes or so to talk. And then there's going to be some question and answer time. So we'd love to hear your perspective.
Okay, thank you so much. Today I have interpreted because many Spanish people look this program. So my partner for work, Jimena Jimenez, she work in Wola, she would interpret it for me. So I will off my camera because my internet is a little bit down. So I don't know si Jimena here. Jimena?
Sí, estoy aquí.
Okay, perfect. So, okay, voy a utilizar no cámara porque me es importante. Tengo la internet un poco mal, entonces eso me quita.
He's not going to use his camera because his internet's not working very well.
Pero como todos ustedes saben, soy chamán, babalao y defensor de los derechos humanos.
So I'm a shaman, babalao, and also a human rights defender.
Por más de una década abogo por los derechos humanos en la región, en África y en muchos lugares de América Latina.
So for more than a decade, I've been advocating for human rights in the region, Latin America, Africa, and other areas.
Por supuesto, incluyendo mi país, Cuba.
Including for my country, Cuba.
Pero después del asesinato de George Floyd, comienzo un programa en línea con Jimena que enfoca en restaurar los temas más pertinentes de derechos humanos, político, étnico y de corrupción en las Américas.
So after the assassination of George Floyd, I started a TV program with Jimena that tries to raise awareness of the most pertinent political issues in the region, including human rights, racism, corruption.
También hemos estado visibilizando las voces de todos los colombianos, desde víctimas, victimarios en los Andes, también tocando para militares, ex-FARC, afrocolombianos, palenqueros, indígenas, mujeres. O sea, traemos a todo el sector a nuestro programa, que es visto en Europa, América Latina, Contagio Radio, La Nueva Prensa, WOLA y otros.
So in the program, we bring the voices of all people affected by the peace process. So from victims to victimizers, Afro-Colombian, raizales, palenqueros, women, many others. Basically, the point of the program is to bring their perspectives.
Es un programa que sale en Contagio Radio, La Nueva Prensa y en varios canales internacionales.
It's viewed in Contagio Radio, La Nueva Prensa, and multiple other channels in the world.
Hoy específicamente voy a hablar, por supuesto, de la victoria de Petro, la presencia de Francia Marquez, pero antes voy a dar una síntesis de mis recientes viajes a Colombia para poder entender el contexto.
So today I'm going to talk about Petro's victory, of course, the importance of Francia Marquez. But prior to doing that, I'm going to give a little summary that comes from my recent trips to Colombia.
En febrero de este año estuve visitando la selva de Chocó, en las comunidades apartadas de Cacarica, donde estuve con los sobrevivientes del ataque paramilitar que sucedió en 1997, llamado Operación Génesis.
So in February, I was in the jungle of Chocó in the faraway region of the river community of Cacarica with the survivors of the paramilitary military operation known as Operation Genesis.
Eso provocó el desplazamiento de más de 30,000 afrocolombianos y fue lo que consolidó el paramilitarismo en esa región para poder entender Colombia.
Genesis is really important because it led to the displacement of over 30,000 Afro-Colombians and helped to consolidate paramilitarism in that region.
En esa visita tuvimos intercambio con los actores de la ex-FARC, con la AUC, quienes hoy en día se dedican a la reconciliación con las víctimas en apoyar el acuerdo de paz histórico, como sabemos, iniciado en el 2016 en La Habana.
So during that visit, we had exchanges and mediation sessions with former FARC and AUC paramilitaries who today are dedicated to reconciling with the victims, consolidating peace, and making sure that the historic 2016 peace accord that was signed in Havana advances.
Tenemos que entender que también específicamente en el Pacífico colombiano, la situación de los afrodescendientes, de los indígenas, sigue en decadencia, sigue muy mal.
It's important to note that the situation for Afro-Colombians and indigenous in the Pacific region of the country has basically significantly deteriorated, and it continues to deteriorate. It's really bad.
Hay confinamientos debido a los combates entre los grupos, el control del clan del Golfo, como ya todos saben, de comunidades enteras y de jóvenes indígenas, suicidándose para no ser forzosamente ingresados en las Fuerzas Armadas, en los grupos armados.
There's armed combat, there's control of the Gulf Clan paramilitaries, and you have a phenomenon of youth, especially indigenous youth, committing suicide in order to avoid being forcibly recruited into these groups.
Dicho esto, quiere decir que el histórico acuerdo de paz en el 2016, pese a los cambios de la ex-FARC de desmovilizarse, todavía la situación allí es grave.
So this is just to say that in spite of the 2016 peace accord, which demobilized the FARC, the situation remains really grave.
Tenemos que entender que todavía el actual gobierno o el actual narcoestado de Iván Duque su enfoque fue en destrozar el acuerdo de paz totalmente.
So it's important to understand that the current government, the government led by Iván Duque, which I call a narco government, basically spent all of its time trying to tear apart the peace accord.
Incluso, como todos sabemos, ese narcoestado abogó por que Estados Unidos le ponga nuevamente a Cuba en la lista de terrorismo y la situación, por supuesto, con Venezuela, todo lo que exporta ese lado negativo de paramilitarismo que se exporta para el mundo, incluyendo el asesinato del presidente de Haití.
So it's important to mention that this narco state of Colombia was the one that advocated for Cuba to be placed back on the terrorism list, US policy towards Venezuela that we see now, and all of these mechanisms of basically exporting paramilitarism around the world that includes the killing of the Haitian president.
El país de Colombia se agudizó, dando lugar que entre el 8 de agosto y el 4 de junio de este año, o sea, Indepaz da una cifra aproximadamente de 930 líderes sociales, entre ellos 126 mujeres.
So if we look at figures that Indepaz has put out of the time that Duque was in power up until June 4th, you've had the assassination of over 927 leaders, social leaders, including 126 women.
245 firmantes del acuerdo de paz de la ECFAR, incluyendo 11 mujeres asesinadas.
More than 200, perdón, decime la figura otra vez.
Que
245
firmantes del acuerdo de paz.
Okay, so
de la
245
FARC,
former FARC members assassinated, including 11 women.
y han sucedido hasta la fecha 261 masacres con 1,144 víctimas. O sea, estamos
And
hablando
during this time, you also had 2060. 260?
261 masacres.
271 massacres with more than 1,400 victims.
O sea, que estamos hablando de una situación totalmente grave en la que empujó que el pueblo saliera a las calles en busca de ese cambio.
So the situation was so bad that the people went out into the streets to seek change.
Donde, por supuesto, para los que estuvimos allí en Colombia, en todo el proceso, tanto en la primera vuelta como en la segunda vuelta, disfrutar la victoria de una izquierda moderada fue imprescindible para el cambio de Colombia.
So for those of us who were present during the first and second rounds and saw the victory of what is really a moderate left, saw something that was really unprecedented in Colombian history.
Vimos un movimiento ciudadano extensivo, vimos un pacto histórico que logró ganar las elecciones trayendo el primer presidente de izquierda y la primera negra o la primera, sí, bueno, afrodescendiente en la historia de Colombia.
We saw for the first time a left president win, and for the first time bringing a Black woman or Afro-descendant as vice president.
En lo personal, que conozco a Francia, nos conocemos de años, hemos trabajado juntos, hemos luchado juntos para este triunfo y prácticamente en la lucha llega un momento que uno es familia. Le puedo decir que tenerla a ella ahí es una esperanza para Colombia.
So on a personal level, I have worked with Francia for many years. We've been in the struggle together for many years. And as you know, when you do that, you end up becoming family. And I just want to say that having her in this position as vice president is really a hope for the country.
Es una líder afrocolombiana, como sabemos, campesina, madre de cabeza de familia en el norte del Cauca, donde hemos visitado allí, hemos compartido el mismo pan en la lucha.
So she's a rural farmer, campesina from Northern Cauca. She's a mother, head of household from Northern Cauca, La Toma, and basically we've been there sharing bread.
Por tanto, desde el tiempo de la esclavitud afrocolombiana e indígena, han luchado por sobrevivir la minería de oro a pequeña escala y la agricultura en las montañas del Cauca. De ahí donde viene.
Francia comes from an area that has been inhabited by Afro-Colombians since the time that they were brought over as enslaved people, and they jointly with indigenous have been fighting mining operations of gold since then, and that's where she's from.
Es donde en esa situación ella crea ese movimiento de resistencia en compañía de lograr legalizar el oro, las minerías.
So she helped form this movement of women that tried to legalize the ancestral gold mining in that area.
Ella fue instrumental en parar ese esfuerzo que fue apoyado por muchos en los Estados Unidos. Por tanto, ella jugó un papel vital en ese cambio con relación de la mirada de Estados Unidos hacia esa parte de la región.
So she was able to stop illegal, large-scale, multinational gold mining in her area with the help of many people in the United States.
Ella ganó el afamado premio ambiental Goffman por su lucha durante años.
So she was the winner of the Goldman Environmental Prize due to all this work she's done for years.
Por tanto, podríamos hablar horas sobre ella y este programa no tendríamos tiempo, pero sí vamos a profundizar en qué se avecina.
So we could talk for hours about Francia. We don't have time to do that now. What I'm going to talk about now is what is to come.
Como ustedes saben, reciente, desde el sur de la Florida, hay enojo, hay frustración con relación a todo lo que tiene que ver con la victoria de Petro, pero también legisladores, senadores aquí en los Estados Unidos, como Marco Rubio y toda esa camarilla, están tratando de crear una imagen negativa del gobierno, del futuro gobierno.
So there's been a lot of bad feeling in Southern Florida, and certain legislators in the US Congress, Marco Rubio, Maria Elvira Salazar, have been trying to foment a fear and basically scare people in the United States about this government that's about to take power.
Pero desde mi punto de vista, es una oportunidad histórica donde por mucho que traten de bloquear el nuevo gobierno, ya Colombia no va hacia atrás.
But from my point of view, Colombia is not going to step backwards despite any efforts they do to block this government.
¿Qué nos preocupa a nosotros? Es, por ejemplo, las nuevas decisiones que Petro está tomando. O
Some of the decisions that Petro is taking.
Voy a ir directo, por ejemplo, la pronunciación de Murillo como embajador para Colombia aquí en los Estados Unidos.
So I'm going to go directly to the point. The naming of Luis Gilberto Murillo as ambassador to the United States.
Es una preocupación porque es una persona que no está limpia.
I'm worried about this because he has a checkered past.
Es una persona que ha estado involucrado con los anteriores gobiernos, pero de manera muy estrecha.
He's somebody who was involved with multiple prior governments, all of the prior governments, in a very long way.
Y que independientemente la gente o mucha gente ahora se toma sufi con él porque es negro y porque es aquello de que por primera vez en la historia un negro va a ser embajador de Colombia en los Estados Unidos.
So while many people are taking selfies with him and glorifying the fact that it's the first ever Black ambassador to Colombia to the United States,
hay una diferencia entre Francia Marquez, que no hay por dónde cogerle un error y donde tiene un historial limpio de lucha, a Murillo, que fue hasta dimitido en Chocó.
There's a very big difference between Francia Marquez, where you can't find any fault in anything that she's really done, and Murillo, who was taken out of office twice in Chocó.
O sea, es de preocupar, es muy de preocupar, pero vamos a estarlo observando.
Something very worrisome, but we will be monitoring.
Estamos felices que Álvaro Leiva va a ser el nuevo canciller para el gobierno de Petro.
We're happy that Álvaro Leiva was chosen to be the new foreign minister for Petro's government.
Es amigo de años, lo conozco personalmente y estuvo también, fue uno de los partícipes clave en lograr el histórico acuerdo de paz en el 2016 en La Habana, Cuba.
So he's somebody that I've worked with for years. I know him very well. He was instrumental in getting the 2016 peace accord passed.
Por tanto, nosotros desde aquí, desde Estados Unidos, que somos defensores de los derechos humanos y que estamos dentro de la política interna, tenemos que tratar de trabajar en conjunto y de buscar consenso para lograr que la paz en Colombia, o que el acuerdo de paz, si se retoma el acuerdo de paz como prometió Petro, entonces Colombia va a poder ser un ejemplo para América Latina y tendremos un poco de paz en la región.
We in the United States really need to work hard to guarantee that Petro can advance his agenda, in particular, make the 2016 peace accord a real reality in Colombia, so that there's actual real peace in the country.
Pienso que hay muchos puntos que tratar, pero voy a dejarlo así. Pues si hay preguntas y eso, pienso que es más fácil. Hay mucho de qué hablar del nuevo gobierno, hay mucho de qué hablar de lo que está aconteciendo. La próxima semana va una delegación de alto nivel a Colombia, desde aquí de los Estados Unidos. Entonces, habría que ver qué sucede.
So there's a lot to talk about, but I'm going to leave it there. Just to mention, there is a high-level delegation of the U.S. government going to Colombia next week, which is something that we could also talk about. I will leave it there.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ofunji, and thank you, James. As noted earlier, we have a few questions for you. I'm hoping that some of the folks that joined the coffee hour here also have some questions. And again, as we're going through these, please feel free to enter them into the chat or the Facebook comments, and we will read them shortly to our two presenters. So first, I guess the SCOTA had prepared some questions in advance, and we'd like to ask the both of you, maybe you first, James, just if you could each comment on kind of what your perspective is, and to, you know, what's behind the strikes, what went behind, what the street protests, the popular movements, what are the issues that are underlying a lot of those, and the potentially how they connected to the election.
Well, I think they connected I think the reason that Petro and Francia Marquez won is because they rode a wave of a series of popular strikes, mingas, agrarian strikes, a series of popular movements that, I mean, you could start at a number of different points, you know, but I'm thinking especially since 2012 when popular movements really pressed for, and the, you know, whole Colombian society across lines, not the whole, but across many, many lines, many political perspectives demanded and forced a peace movement, you know, a peace process. But I think the popular strikes have had largely to do, they've been a rejection of the austerity measures and some of the more extreme security measures of the Duque government. But I also don't think it is discussed sufficiently in the US the degree to which the popular strikes were also a rejection of the state and para-state terrorism and violence against popular movements, against signers of the peace accords. I think people have just endured so much political violence, so much erosion of rights, so much poverty that they just literally had enough and had nothing to lose. And I was here for the big strike in 2019, which literally saw millions of people participating all over the country. And shortly after the strike of 2021, and the energy was very high. The demands, you know, were very clear, and I just believe that those strikes were what enabled the Petro and Marquez election to, you know, succeed, campaigns succeed.
Thank you. And Ofunchi, are you able to add any perspective to that as well?
Bueno, el paro social jugó un papel vital en la victoria del pacto histórico. Fue imprescindible el paro social.
The national strike was very important and had a huge role in leading to the victory that we see with Petro and Francia.
Fue un paro donde los jóvenes tomaron el protagonismo.
So the youth were the protagonists of this national strike.
Donde independientemente de la masacre y todo lo que hizo el SMAP en combinación o por orden de este narcoestado, no se pudo parar la rabia, la indignación de los jóvenes principalmente.
So despite the fact that it was met with tremendous repression from the narco state, the anti-riot police, the ESMAD, and what have you, the rage and the indignation of what was going on in the country didn't stop people from continuing to protest.
Por tanto, por primera vez en la historia de Colombia se ve una situación donde incluso a los que tuvimos la oportunidad de ser testigo de ese movimiento o de ese estallido social, o sea, poderlo ver, tocar, sentir, pudimos ver que se sumaron todas las clases. Fue interesante, fue un estallido social no típico, puesto que se sumaron todas las clases en la lucha por el cambio de Colombia.
So it was also a situation where for those of us who were able to see it, feel it, what was going on, it was historic in the sense that it unified different classes of people against the state.
Fue un paro histórico donde no solamente se reclamaban los cambios los cambios imprescindibles, sino también se reclamaba el derecho de los indígenas, el derecho a la tierra, el derecho de los afrodescendientes, el stop, el pare de el abuso de las transnacionales mineras, donde se reclamaba o sea, el derecho a los trabajadores, o sea, el sindicato, jóvenes, todo el mundo se unió en busca de ese cambio.
So it was also historic because it unified many struggles that had already been taking place in Colombia, including the Afro-Colombian struggle, the indigenous struggle, the anti-multinational struggle, labor rights struggle, multiple different things all together.
Y para mí en particular, o para algunos de nosotros que tuvimos un rol clave de servir de puente entre la verdad que estaba sucediendo en el terreno en vivo para el mundo internacional con relación a la manipulación de la prensa colombiana, fue eso algo que nos marcó en la vida de nosotros.
So we were able to bring what was going on straight from the ground through the program, while there was a real manipulation of most of the press in Colombia about what was going on and being presented outside. And so that was a very important thing.
Donde estuvimos transmitiendo en vivo cada secuencia de lo que estaba sucediendo, pero a la misma vez el presidente Duque mintiéndole al mundo y recibiendo premios internacionalmente.
So we were able to basically contrast what was being presented through directly bringing in the voices of what was going on the ground during a time that President Duque was basically lying to the international community about what was happening.
So, por tanto, yo anoté algo sencillo aquí, se los voy a leer, un análisis que hice para el programa muy breve, donde puse adicionalmente lo sucedido durante el paro nacional y el estallido social del 2021 fue desastroso.
So I just wrote something quickly. What happened during the national strike was very disastrous for the people.
Primeramente, después de que muchos amigos de Duque se robaron los fondos para aliviar el hambre y desesperación causada por la pandemia, donde la mitad del país cayó en pobreza, en la línea de pobreza.
So after the friends of Duque stole a lot of the money that was set up to alleviate the effects of the pandemic on people, where more than half the country fell under the poverty line.
Y desesperación causada por la pandemia, donde la mitad del país se vio en problema, se decide introducir una reforma tributaria.
Basically, he decided to implement a tax reform at that moment.
Que precisamente golpeaba a los sectores más vulnerables y decaídos por los efectos económicos de la pandemia.
Which precisely was a burden on the economic sectors that were worst affected by the pandemic.
Duque ordenó que el SMAT, antimotines, policía y el ejército trate a su pueblo como el enemigo.
So basically, Duque ordered the anti-riot police, SMAD, the military, and the regular police to treat their own people as an internal enemy.
Hay que entender que en Colombia uno de los efectos que más contribuye al crimen, a los asesinatos de inocentes, es el enemigo interno, el famoso fantasma del enemigo interno. Eso es un problema grave.
A serious problem in Colombia is this doctrine of the internal enemy. used by the security forces that contributes to a lot of these killings.
Muchos perdieron sus vidas y muchos funcionamientos y muchos perdieron sus ojos.
Many people were killed during this repression, and many others lost the ability to use their eyes.
Los asesinatos, violaciones de mujeres en plena luz del día, que eso lo vio el mundo entero, y la inhabilidad de dialogar para mejorar la situación llevó a Colombia a casi a caer en una guerra civil.
So basically, you had rapes of women taking place during daylight, something that was even seen on video by people. And the situation was so terrible that it almost pushed Colombia into a civil war.
Como ya dije anteriormente, durante todo ese tiempo, su gobierno se pasaron viajando el mundo, justificando las violaciones y desacreditando a los líderes sociales, apoyando a la policía y su accionar.
And during that whole time, this government of Duque went around the world basically justifying their actions and supporting what the police was doing.
O sea, exactamente lo que Duque hizo en días pasados, cuando sale el informe final, o se presenta el informe final de la G, él simplemente tenía compromiso con Lisboa, una justificación fuera de lugar. Por tanto, ese hecho histórico que sucedió el pasado año fue quien le dio la fuerza y la base al cambio en Colombia.
So basically, Duque still does this. You know, very recently, when you had the launch of the Truth Commission's final report on June 28th, he was nowhere to be found. He was somewhere in Portugal. And basically, it was this national strike, after many others, that forced this change in government in Colombia.
Esa es mi opinión, más o menos así, de manera simplificada, con relación a ese histórico suceso o esa movilización histórica.
So that's my just sort of quick opinion about this historical mobilization that happened.
How do you, and I know you kind of touched.
Brian, this is Marcy, and I just
Okay.
want to say something before you go on. So
Yep.
we only have, I'm Marcy, and I'm from the Solidarity Committee of the Americas, and we only have about, at most, 10 minutes left. And so I'm going to start being the timekeeper and saying 2 minutes when it's
Yeah,
time
go ahead.
for, say time when it's time, because we want, I think Brian has a couple more questions, and then if anybody in the audience has questions, please
Hola.
put them in the chat or in the Facebook comments, and we will get those to people. But we just want to get through as many questions in our short period of time we have left. And we really appreciate the speakers. They're fantastic. So thank you. And the interpretation. So thank you. Go ahead, Brian.
Okay.
After I interrupt. So.
Well, thank you. I guess maybe we needed a timekeeper. This is a complicated issue, and so there's a lot of information to share and to discuss. I guess I think there are a couple of questions left that we had, but they kind of come down to this. We're kind of wondering a little bit if you could each comment a little bit on how you anticipate the consequences of this election, to what's going to be the effect on relations with Venezuela, which is an important neighbor to Colombia, and then also with the United States.
Ya yo puedo contestar directo. Y tú me interpretas.
Should I jump in there, or do you want to jump in?
Yes.
Ofunchi? Okay. Well, I think it's important to understand with regards to Petro, I think for whatever, and Marquez, what they're going to achieve, as brutal as brutal as the repression of the strike was, it was able to stop some of the worst measures by Duque. And even for a brief moment, because we've been tracking this, the political violence, actually the rates of it dipped just a little bit after the strike of the assassinations, not the violence against crowds, but the assassinations, but then picked up again. But I'm talking about that in terms of like the U.S. relationship of the U.S. because to Colombia and then to the wider region, because when we saw helicopters attacking the crowds in during the strike, those helicopters came from something like $500 million given to the organization based, or the company based in Virginia, PAE, to develop and build the Colombian National Police aviation capabilities. And of course, the tear gas canisters, the rubber bullets made in the USA. And what we saw internally, how police militarization, the founding and financing of SMOD are extensions of US policies of police militarization and tactics of repression. The same goes on with regards to the rest of the region, the rest of the world. Colombia still exists to a large extent as a military colony of the Pentagon, a important partner with NATO that sent troops to Afghanistan, to Yemen. Colombian troops have patrolled Central American and West African sea and airspace with U.S. troops, you know, in the company of them. The Colombian military and security forces have trained tens of thousands of personnel around the world in techniques of police militarization, prison militarization, border militarization, and war techniques. So Colombia is an important component of the empire strategies of military control. Of Venezuela as a launching pad against Venezuela, against the region. And I know we need to hurry, but Petro and Marquez can't work miracles. But I think that where they need international solidarity, two good areas are going to be with regards to Venezuela and supporting their moves to normalize relations, to open the borders rather, you know. So I think that's going to need international solidarity to really get where it needs to go. And the other thing, coming back to SMOD, Petro has said he would like to see SMOD dismantled. And SMOD, again, was created as one of the first initiatives of Plan Colombia. One of the first person that SMOD killed was a Colombian protesting the war in Afghanistan, by the way. So there's always, they exist to repress rural and urban popular movements and protests. That's what they exist for. And that is something that can't be SMOD, police militarization, and
time is getting to be
okay. Yeah, I'll just say that it's the export of weapons to the military and police of Colombia is big profits, and for them to achieve any pushback against that is going to really, our international and U.S. solidarity is going to be super important.
Appreciate that. And Ofunchi, are you able to comment on that as well? Just what the impact of this election is going to have on relationships with Venezuela and the United States as far as Colombia is concerned?
Voy a tratar de ser lo más breve posible.
We'll try to be brief.
Primero, Estados Unidos necesita petróleo.
The United States needs oil.
También es cierto que este grupo que va la próxima semana a Colombia es porque sí está asustado.
So this delegation of the United States high-level delegation going next week to Colombia is because they're scared.
Pero pienso que independientemente de todas las trabas que la ultraderecha del sur de la Florida le va a poner al gobierno actual, al nuevo gobierno,
So I think despite all of the obstacles that are going to be created by the ultra-right, especially those from southern Florida,
se ha demostrado que Petro es una persona que sabe negociar.
Petro knows how to negotiate.
Es importantísimo que mejoren las relaciones entre Venezuela y Colombia, teniendo en cuenta las atrocidades que están sucediendo en la frontera.
It is absolutely essential that the relationship between Venezuela and Colombia is improved, especially given all the atrocities happening along the border.
Por tanto, desde mi punto de vista, va a haber una no alianza, pero va a haber una flexibilidad, pero con mucho cuidado, porque querramos o no, es Estados Unidos quien es el mayor contribution a Colombia por la parte tanto militar como económica. Esa es mi opinión.
Basically, you know, there will be some negotiation, but we have to remember that the US is the #1 donor, both militarily and commercially, to Colombia.
This is my opinion, my humble opinion.
Okay. So I think thank you. I think we have a question in the Zoom chat, so.
Yeah, it's this is a question first to James. Can you talk a little more about the sentiment of the people after the election?
Well, I was, as I said, I was here for both rounds of the presidential elections, and I was coordinating teams that went around the country and also coordinating our live stream news emissions, which meant that while everybody was out seeing what was happening in the countryside and the seats, I was in a little apartment, you know, hearing from them. But I will say that I was on the live stream. We were doing the election watch when it was clear that Petro had won. It was clear, you know, Rodolfo Hernandez had congratulated him. It had accepted the results, and I was in Cali, and I just want to say the whole city outside my window broke out in noise, people pouring into the streets, people honking horns. It was pretty incredible, and it was very cool. I don't know who had the loudspeaker that loud, but somebody was playing the Himno Nacional, and everybody in every neighborhood could hear it. And I went down to the streets, and yes, it was a big party. I'll also just say real quickly that last night I went to supper with an old friend from college who's not a leftist at all, and with some other people. And one of them was talking about how she voted in blank, or, you know, she voted blank. She abstained from voting basically for either candidate, but she was so happy that Rodolfo Hernandez left. So, I mean, I think that the popular support, Petro won against a mountain of irregularities and fraud by the right wing. So that just shows how much popular support he had. But even in the center right, there was definitely rejection of the establishment status quo of Uribismo and the, you know, and this and I think that even that abstention from voting was in that case actually more vote for Petro than it was for the right wing.
Ofunchi, if you could answer in a couple minutes, that would be great, to the same question.
Ok, gracias. Ustedes dan pocos minutos para preguntas amplias, pero está bien.
Says you give very short time for very important questions, but that's okay.
Yeah, right.
No, lo que yo percibí dentro de, recuerdo que terminó la elección y cuando se estaba haciendo el conteo a los menos de los 40 minutos ya sabíamos que Petro había ganado.
So during the counting that was going on at the voting tables, within 40 minutes, everybody knew that Petro had won.
Yo estaba en el Cauca, digo, en Cali, y aquello se cayó abajo. Aquello fue la gente llorando, emocionado, todos salieron para la calle y estuvimos hasta el día siguiente disfrutando en las calles.
So basically everything just erupted into a mass celebration. People were crying, people were out in the streets, and it basically was a party that I was a part of until the next day.
En el caso de nosotros estábamos también reportando para internacional. Entonces la emoción fue doble.
We were also reporting this live internationally, so it was a double happiness.
Ahora, ¿qué vimos allí? Que se vieron las banderas del M-19.
So one thing that we
grupo
noticed,
guerrillero, o sea, el grupo guerrillero que se desmovilizó que se desmovilizó a raíz y que aclamaba la Constitución de 1991.
so one thing that we saw were a lot of flags of the M19. This is the former guerrilla group that demobilized, that helped bring in the 1991 political constitution.
Y que por supuesto fue bloqueada por el paramilitarismo.
That constitution was never fully realized because it was blocked by paramilitaries.
Por tanto, es un punto importantísimo que uno tiene que tomar en cuenta cómo tantas banderas del M-19 estuvieron presentes en ese histórico acto. O sea, ya cuando entonces, el sentimiento para muchos, para el pueblo como tal, es muy positivo. Por supuesto, para la oposición es negativa, pero vamos a ver qué acontece, porque también esto nos va a traer, le trae una influencia y una esperanza también al vecino Brasil.
So basically, the point about the M19 flags is very important because it was basically historically referring to that agenda of 1991 being brought back in. And so there was a lot of happiness and hope, and hopefully we will also get that from Brazil.
Esa es mi respuesta. Muy corta, pero porque ustedes le ponen tiempo a uno.
So that had to be very short because of the time limit.
Yes. Thank you for how brief you were, both of you. So it's back to Brian. So.
Well, are there no other questions?
No.
Okay. Well, I think that concludes our coffee hour. We went a little over, but that's fine. Thank you for joining us again. Please like the SCOTA page, and we look forward to seeing you again. Thanks much.
I just wanted to note that we did record this event, and so it will be on our Facebook page, the SCOTA Solidarity Committee of the Americas Facebook page right away. And then it will be on the YouTube page of Women Against Military Madness, our parent organization. So you can watch it again or share it with your friends. And we will be sharing this nationally with a bunch of lists that we have. Thank you.
Muchas gracias por haber invitado también.
Yeah.
Thank you. I
Thank you.
really enjoyed it and appreciate the opportunity.
Quiero
both
aprovechar.
Speakers were great. So
thank you for inviting me. And I just
quiero aprovechar rapidito para decirle que este programa que hacemos todos los jueves en línea es conectado a La Nueva Prensa, Contagio Radio, conectado también a Naciones Unidas, y que tocamos temas profundos con las víctimas y los participantes en los hechos.
So I just want to mention that on Thursdays we do have this program. It comes out in the YouTube channels of La Nueva Prensa, Contagio Radio, UN also supports it, and we talk about all of these issues, bringing the voices of the people most affected.
El programa se llama Colombia Acuerdo de Paz.
And the name of the program is Colombia Peace Accord.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, James. Good luck with the Kali situation.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you to both of you.
With that,
Yeah.
yeah.
okay, well, I had better run. I have another event back to back. So thank you again, and I'm looking forward to sharing the transcript or the YouTube channel and everything.
Thanks, James.